Yes.
Okay, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the September 8th, 2021 TransNet Independent Taxpayers Oversight Committee, better known as ITOC meeting. My name is Sunny House, and I was appointed as the new ITOC chair for FY 2022. I also want to introduce and welcome Stuart Halpern, who is going to be my vice chair for the committee. So let's, first of all, thank you staff for putting the meeting together. You always work very hard behind the scenes to get this meeting up and running and develop the agenda and all the documents. So really appreciate it. I also would like to thank everyone who has joined us by phone or by web and taking the time to do that. Let's confirm, Clerk, you've confirmed that we do have a quorum, right?
Yes, Chair, we do have a quorum.
Okay, very good. Before we get started, let's ask our interpreter, Carlos Diaz, to introduce himself and walk through the process of the interpretation services. Carlos?
Thank you, Chair House, and good morning. As the chair just indicated, we do have simultaneous interpretation available. In the event that there are any comments or questions in Spanish, if you want to use the interpretation feature, please scroll down to the bottom of the Zoom screen where your meeting controls are. Click on the interpretation icon. It looks like a little world, and then select English as your language. If you are joining through the Zoom mobile app on a cell phone, tablet, or other mobile device, first press the ellipsis, then interpretation, and then choose your language. Finally, click on mute original audio to not hear the original Spanish flow in the background. Thank you, and this message will now repeat in Spanish. Muy buenos días, estoy ofreciendo servicio de interpretación simultánea. Para hacer uso del mismo, por favor desplácese a la parte inferior de la pantalla de Zoom donde aparecen sus controles, haga clic en el icono de interpretación, parece un globo terráqueo, y seleccione Spanish o español. Si está utilizando la aplicación móvil de Zoom en celular, tableta, etc., presione primero los puntos suspensivos, luego interpretación y luego el idioma. Por último, si no desea escuchar el audio original en inglés en el fondo, por favor seleccione Mute Original Audio o silenciar audio original. Gracias and thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Carlos. Okay, we have a packed agenda today, including some consent items, items for discussion and action. So let's get started. Our first item on the agenda is public comments. Are there any public comments? Any members of the public who would like to speak?
No, Chair, there are no public comments.
Okay. Are there any members of the committee who would like to make a comment on the agenda or anything else before we get started? No? Okay, I don't see any hands. So our next item is Executive Director's report. By the way, for public comments, there will be an opportunity at the end also for public comments. I understand Hassan might be running a little bit late. Is that still the case, Ariana?
Yes, Chair House, it appears he is still running a little bit late. So we'll keep an eye out for him if you'd like to move on to the next item in the meantime.
No problem. So our next item on the agenda is actually consent items. There are several items on the consent. There's going to be approval of meeting minutes for both 2 July meetings, as well as several other reports. Before we take a motion for approval, are there any of the consent items that need to be discussed at this committee meeting? If anyone needs to raise their hand as far as the committee members, please let me know. Okay, sounds like we're good. Okay, so I would like to entertain a motion for approval of the meeting minutes, both for July 7th and July 14th. Pedro, you have your screen on. Would you like to make a motion?
Yes, so moved.
Thank you. And Mike, you turn your screen on as well?
I'd like to second the motion.
Very good. Can we call for a vote, please?
CEO, Private Sector Chair Sunny House.
Aye.
Finance Budgeting Vice Chair Stuart Halpern.
Halpern, yes.
Real Estate Right-of-Way Acquisition, Jonathan Frankel.
Yes.
Biology Environmental, Dustin Hoffman is absent. Licensed Engineer, Les Hopper is absent. Licensed Civil Traffic Engineer, Michael Kinney.
Yes.
Contractor Construction, Pedro Orso Delgado,
Aye.
and that passes.
Thank you very much. I did not ask for public comments, but I don't know if there were any. So
No, Chair, there are no public comments.
great. So we got that out of the way, and I didn't think there was any discussion items. So, okay, we move on. We still don't have Hassan yet, right? You let me know, Ariana, when he comes in. So, okay, so the next item on the agenda is actually the chair's report, item 7. Is that correct?
Yes, that's correct. That is
Okay.
correct.
So you may have noticed a new item on the agenda today for discussion, and it has to do with the goals that I would like us to consider and accomplish for ITOC, for this ITOC body this year. I have always been a goal-oriented person. That's how I've lived my career, my life, and I think when you work within a team environment, it is important for the team members to all be on the same page. And we all know what we're working towards. Of course, we have a responsibility and duty to the taxpayers to oversee the expenditure and implementation of TransNet. But within this year, what do we want to accomplish so that we can say at the end of the year, this is what we did, and this is how we improved our performance and implementation of ITOC and TransNet. So that's why I am suggesting these goals. I want to thank Stuart and Sandex staff for working with me to create and develop this list of goals. Committee members, you will have an opportunity to discuss and provide input today. And depending on how things go, whether we get it approved or we need more time to discuss, we'll decide that at the end. But I want to go through the goals, and at the end, after I go through each of the ITOC goals, then we'll have an opportunity to discuss, and I would then ask for Stuart as well to weigh in, since he was involved in the development of these goals. Then we get into discussions. And then after that, Sandex staff will go through their goals that will commensurate or be commensurate with ours as well. So goal number 1 is about really opening up direct lines of communication with the TransNet entities that receive funding from SANDAC. It's inviting them to be at our meetings or present their successes in implementation and use of the funds, TransNet funds, or talk about their challenges that they may be having. We always hear secondhand from SANDAC staff about what these entities or these agencies are doing to use these funds. So I just thought it would be good and it would be important for us to have more of a direct communication. So I've asked staff to identify or invite these entities, cities, transit agencies, other stakeholders that are using the funds to come in once a quarter to present and to talk, to discuss, what's going well, what's not going well, what the future brings, just keep us in the loop a little bit more. So that's what goal number 1 is about. Goal number 2 has to do with really the heightened concerns that this community, this region has about pedestrian and bicycle safety. We know in the past few months has been really tough with the loss of lives and safety concerns for bike riders. And we've had also issues with pedestrians being injured or losing lives. So, I know that one of the reasons I wanted to heighten this and really pay a little bit of focus and attention to it is because TransNet hasn't, in the transit ordinance, there is a section for improving pedestrian.
Can't hear anything here.
Hi, okay, I see Hassan. So we wanted to make, there's actually 2% allocated, and SANDAC has been delivering and performing to try to basically improve bicycle safety. Well, the triennial audit that was conducted and accepted in June has Chapter 5 that focuses on safety. And, I recommend that you read, it's available online, you can access it and read it, but there are several recommendations that will help improve safety within the region. So I'd like us to pay some attention to that. I know the region is working on this as we speak, as far as improving safety, but I want to make sure as ITOC, we pay some attention to it and make sure that the culture of safety is improved within the region and within SANDAG as well. So that's what goal number 2 is about. Goal number 3 and 4 has to do with us, internally with ITOC. It's been many years. 2008 was many, many years ago when TransNet ordinance was developed, was written and approved. The world has changed since then. And SANDAG has taken the lead to making changes that would be in the best interest of the traveling public by looking at the new regional plan, a lot of different amendments that have already been issued. And we know that there's an amendment coming to really improve the mobility and be able to deliver the right program for right now, for what we're going through right now. So, and we've seen equity becoming more heightened, and there's a lot of discussion about equity. ITOC, the technology has changed, so the makeup of ITOC should accordingly change to keep up with the new plan and with what's going on in our communities. So I'm suggesting we focus on diversity. Now, when I say diversity, it's not about just race or gender or anything like that. It's about everything. It's about backgrounds, how the members experience, ITOC members experience, how they can contribute. So those are the kinds of things that we would like to look at, and then make sure that we meet the goals and deadlines of the amendment to be able to improve the ITOC performance and effectiveness as well for the taxpayers. So with that, I'm going to ask Stuart to add anything else you would like, and then we will open it up. And as I said, after this discussion, then we will also go through the SANDAG goals. So Stuart, do you have anything to add?
Thanks, Sunny. I applaud the notion of trying to focus our efforts for the year. It's not something that we've done exactly this way, but I think it's a great concept. The one thing I just wanted to underscore is that I think everybody knows that there's, with the prospective adoption of the new regional plan, there's likely to be an ordinance amendment to sort of clean up the changes between the new regional plan and what's been in the ordinance. And this will be an opportunity for us to all think a little bit creatively about what other kinds of things that we think we might like to see in amending the ordinance with regard to the TransNet ITOC and the functioning of our committee and the oversight we provide. So I would just say, as we're going through this goal-oriented process, that everybody try to think creatively about, based on your experiences, are there prospective enhancements that you think might be worthy of consideration for the ordinance amendment? Thanks.
Thank you. So let's open it up. First of all, are there any public comments on these, what I just went through?
No, Chair, there are no public comments.
Very good. Are there any members of the committee? Michael Kenny, you have your hand up. Yes, go ahead.
Unmute, turn on the video. With respect to safety, I'm happy to see that was second on the list there. Most of our member agencies have to do a safety plan for HSIP grant applications, so they should have some data in front of them that they prepared recently for that. So we might ask them to share those with us. Coming from some experience on the public side, just asking people to come in and talk about safety in their town is, that's always a bit of a challenge there. It's a heavily managed topic. You tend to get a very filtered presentation. But I know there are some professionals out there that we might invite to come in and speak about safety that might provide some interesting information about it that aren't necessarily public employees, and that might be interesting information to kind of flesh out the discussion. So
Sounds good.
that would be my contribution. Thank you.
Thank you. I did fail to also highlight the metrics. With every goal, there is a way we need to measure our success. What's the deliverable? What do we want to accomplish? And how we can demonstrate that we've accomplished that. So as you see the goals in the attachment, there is a metric for each of those goals. That would be what we will be working towards to achieve. And there's got to be a timeline to achieve those goals. Well, since my, I guess, chairmanship ends in fiscal 22, FY22, I think it's what we can do within this year, with this committee. So that's what you see as far as the deliverables and metrics. Is there anyone else on the committee who would like to comment? Pedro.
Madam Chair, I have a question and also a comment. From the question point of view, is there a possibility that we can look at these and set ourselves up for some sort of a workshop to spend a little bit more time discussing them and coming up with the metrics? Or is your intent to get them approved at this meeting today?
I think if the committee needs more time to review and provide comments, that's fine, but we are obligated to have a committee meeting in a public forum. So we can either have a special meeting to just focus on this, or take it up on the next meeting. The only thing is we are up against some deadlines when it comes to the amendment, and I'm happy to work with the committee members on the metrics as well. But as far as the timeline is concerned, goal number 3 and 4, I think is going to take a subcommittee to basically review, come up with the steps that are needed to achieve those goals. So it would be great if we can at least get started, and we can refine the metrics as we go based on input from the committee. I welcome that from everyone. So,
thank you. And my comment on these bullet points, it might be under number 3, or actually number no, it might be under number 2, but that's where I'm having a little bit of a problem. I think under number 2, on the triennial, one of the things that I personally feel that maybe we're missing as far as a gauge of what's going on with the program wise is that we have a very good, robust website that reports on a project by project basis. And each project tends to have the corridor directors and the project managers tend to do a risk assessment of what may come up on each individual project. But I think that maybe we should be able to look at something that deals at a program level and trying to come up with some sort of a risk assessment of what happens if we move monies between one program or one project to another, or if that project gets delayed, what happens, and what are some of the critical elements that we need to be looking out in a global type of basis. And I don't know that it's anywhere in the reports. I mean, the reports have it, but you have to dig through it to figure it out. So that would be my thought, Madam Chair.
No, absolutely. I think you're right on. There's a lot of steps involved in getting, accomplishing these goals throughout the year. We have 10 months to basically achieve them. The metric you see there to basically develop an introductory report to ITOC, including best practices employed by peer agencies, that is something that SANDAG thought that could be done within the time frame of this particular goal, because of all of the other priorities and things that needed to be done to get the amendment, the transit amendment, the regional plan approved, and things like that. I think what it will take for goal number 2 as well would be another good subcommittee who is going to work with SANDAG staff to develop the steps and identify the tasks and things that need to be done to accomplish that goal. So I think that would be the way to go, Pedro, and it sounds like you have a lot of good ideas, and maybe that's something you would like to do.
I would most definitely would like to volunteer for that.
Awesome, very good. Anyone else? Jonathan, go ahead, please.
Thanks so much, Chair House, and just want to express my appreciation to you and Stuart and staff for engaging in this endeavor. I think it is really important to talk about high level what we're interested in achieving. So it's a really valuable exercise. I think just one comment with respect to goal number 1. I think it's a fantastic idea to bring agencies in to talk about their experience in actual project implementation. So we see all the metrics in terms of financials, but actually what that looks like on the ground. And specifically, I'm interested in smart growth program funds and knowing from jurisdictions where they were able to utilize those funds and implement those projects. Did they see the type of growth, the smart type of growth that we're hoping is achieved? Does that actually get achieved? And so we've got SANDAG plays one role, and the TransNet funds play a very important role in trying to incentivize and promote that type of development and growth. And I would be interested to hear from jurisdictions as to whether they were able to use those funds to actually realize that.
That's great. That's exactly the kind of input I'm looking for. So thank you, Jonathan. Mike Kenny, you have your hand up.
Unmute. I thought you were looking for volunteers, so I was volunteering.
Yay. Okay, so before we assign the subcommittee, I would like to know if we are ready for a motion to adopt these goals. However, I'm going to wait, I'm sorry, because we want to also go through the SANDAG goals as well. So let's do that. And Ariana, are you the speaker for SANDAG? Go ahead.
Could I just interject, if I might? I think this is something that we want to have some robust discussion. I'm just curious that in respect of Hassan's time, perhaps we give him the opportunity to do the report and we come back to this, because clearly there's a lot of energy around this. I'm sure everybody wants to discuss further, but I'm sure Hassan's time is limited as well.
Thank you, Stuart. You're absolutely right. We will give the floor to Hassan. Welcome, Hassan, and go ahead and give your update. Are you on mute?
you would think after almost 2 years of this, we'll give them, you try it. You know?
That's okay.
Thank you very much, Chair Sunny House. It was excellent report, excellent goals. I think, like Stuart mentioned, amazing start, warranted a lot of discussion. So I'm really glad to hear you see all of that. And if staff can help you move your goals, we'll be more than ready and happy to do that.
Thank you.
But a great vision, a great report. Let me update you on a few things that are relevant. First, yesterday, September 7th, we all returned to the office, all 495 of us. Obviously, 90% of them don't like their CEO, but you know, that's a whole different story. We're open to the public as of yesterday, and all of our staff are here and at the toll facilities. You know, we'll continue to perfect public participation. Obviously, we did get more public participation in the virtual world, and we want to continue to work toward allowing that to happen as we move forward and build the IT infrastructure for hybrid work. As to the board, the plan was to return to live meetings September, but given the COVID cases rising, and even so they're right now hopefully in the decline, but we decided to delay this a bit, maybe October or November, where I send an email to the board informing them that we will continue to meet virtually in September, which is one meeting on the 24th, and we'll look at it in October. I think I have authority to over the staff. I can't tell the board what to do, but I think some of them feel it's the right decision to wait a bit. One, to allow everyone who wants to get vaccinated to be vaccinated. But we're open for business, and this has been a difficult 18 months for our country, for our region, for all of us as people. I don't know whether life will ever be the same. I don't know what the other side of COVID would look like, but we survived and we thrived and we continued work. And I think we're gonna do better now that we're back together. On the 5 big moves in the regional transportation plan, I want you to know that I did many of these plans in my career. And I participated in a lot of projects, big and small. This is by far the most complicated, but the most amazing and inspiring things my team is working on. The 5 big moves, I think, is a multimodal vision for how to move forward, how to reduce congestion, deal with social equity and social justice, and reduce greenhouse gas emissions. I believe we are in the final couple of months of doing more analysis. We released the environmental impact report. Public comment will be closed, and then we'll be going to the board December 10th for the adoption of the plan. As I said many times before, the plan is not worth the paper it's written on unless it's a funded plan. And that's more complicated. That's where San Diegans have to believe in the vision, have to be willing to pay for it. And I think as an agency, we did really well when it comes to competing for money from Washington and Sacramento. I think we made history in the last couple of years in terms of the amount of money we got to the region for amazing projects. One exciting thing I want to tell you about is, while the plan goes to 2050, people in San Diego don't have to wait until 2050 to see results. So starting next month, before even the adoption of the plan, we are gonna put a request for information out. We're gonna accept unsolicited proposals also for a 14-mile tunnel network that connects to the airport, connects to San Diego's landmark, Pitco Park, Balboa Park, the zoo, SeaWorld, all the things that we as San Diegans are proud of, we want to access. So if you're a tourist coming to San Diego International, you can get to all these landmarks without going anywhere, without needing to rent a car or worry about the buses. So that we're looking for the market innovation. There is a lot of people talking now about systems underground, above ground, that's cheaper, that's electric, that's shared, that's driveless. We're gonna look for the market and to make sure that the companies out there take Sandag as a partner, we're gonna have a stake in this. We're gonna provide a stipend for companies who's willing to work with us on this 14 to 15 miles of tunnels. We'll put the RFI in October. We'll do the evaluations. We have some money to start, and hopefully we'll build this system in no time. But this is what we mean by flexible fleet. This is the fourth big move. Flexible fleet connects the landmark, but also feeds the fixed guideway system we're planning. I just want to caution you about something, and you might switch on your TV station and hear people doing the fear mongering, normal stuff. Tax and track, we're spying on people, we're gonna tax people. This is just fear mongering. We're not gonna spy on anybody. Not only we don't want to, we have no desire, we don't have the right to spy on anybody. The technology exists today to do a lot of things without spying. If you use a toll road today and you have the transponder, if you feel you've been spied on, you tell me. But there is a lot of that coming from an insignificant portion of our leaders who go on TV and says, well, Sandag is gonna track and tax you. As to taxing you, pricing is part of the strategy. We are not gonna shy away from putting that up front. Pricing to manage congestion, to add capacity to the system is part. So high occupancy toll lanes is big part of the 5 big moves in the complete corridors. The I-15 experience will be replicated all over the system. So I hope you can read through the fear mongering and know that nobody is spying on anybody, and we're trying to do what's right for San Diegans in the future. The 5 big moves right now is going through a very extensive outreach. You're gonna hear about it very soon in your neighborhood, at your baseball games, that we really want San Diegans to truly understand what we're planning for their future. And I am, again, honored to be part of this process. I have an amazing team that's working on it, a team that unmatched, and you will be hearing from us a lot about this in the coming days. As to the, you're gonna hear today and in the next meetings at ITOC, our desire to do certain things in terms of the ordinance. I think I started talking to you before about that, about the active transportation program, the social equity pilot programs. This is all will lead to a request to change the ordinance, change the project that we talked about last time. So stay tuned for that. A couple of projects to update you on that are important. One is the Mid-Coast Rally. I hope you find time last month to come to our amazing celebration with the community. 1,500 members of our community came by. It was very impressive to see mom and dad and kids coming and riding the train. Most exciting thing about this is this was for the community. And this is what Sandag should be known as, delivering major infrastructure projects. This project is still on time, on budget. will be turned over to MTS to operate in November. That's the plan. And I think delivering the largest infrastructure project on time and budget is something to be talked about. So for Jim Lithicum and his team and all the teams that work on this, kudos, and I'm proud of this project. And I hope you find time to come to the celebration November 21st, where we're gonna have tens of thousands of people coming celebrate with our leaders. And I hope you find time, and if you have a desire as ITOC member, we'll arrange it to take a ride now on the trolley. There is a ride. It's spectacular. So seeing from up there, the beautiful San Diego. So amazing project, on time, on budget, moving forward. And I'm proud of the teams that delivered this project on time and on budget. On the NAVWAR project, as you know, the Navy started the NEPA process. We started our CEQA. We still have alternatives to consider, but I want to report to you that even though there might be many sites for a transportation hub, the NAVWAR site has an economic impact to the region that cannot be matched by any other site. So we're still working with the United States Navy moving forward. I'm hoping that very soon you're going to hear some good news about the next step. But we're determined to build a central mobility hub that connects to the airport and to the rest of San Diego's landmarks. Otamesa 2, as you know, May 28th, we signed a memorandum of understanding with Mexico. Our Lieutenant Governor, Elena Sonolakis, and our Secretary of Transportation, David Kim, were representing us. I think things are moving. Our hope is still to open this facility September 2024. And finally, the Del Mar Bluff construction, I'm happy to report that we reached milestone there. We're now, the crews have graded the bluff, constructed the foundation to strengthen the bluff, to strengthen and rebuild the slope. Now we're about to start working on the seawall to construct it. Will continue through the summer. I also, as I told you before, we secured the $106 million to do bluff 5 and 6 stabilization. While doing that, and hopefully this will be the last of temporary solutions, we're completing the study. We're now down to 2 alternative tunnel alternatives to move the track off the bluff. Many people told me that this is not going to happen. This is too expensive and going to take too long. And I want you to know that we are working with our leaders in Sacramento to make sure we have money from high-speed rail money to environmentally clear this, design this, and hopefully with the national stimulus get money to build this. I will not recommend to you or to my board ever to do temporary solutions, because fighting nature is not something you can win at the end of the day. Chair Sunny House, the members, this is my report. I'll be happy to answer any question. Thank you for allowing me to speak early.
Thank you, Director, and really appreciate your being here. I always admire your vision and the commitment you have to this region to improve mobility. I do remember the Mission Valley East opening day. I was there and I rode that train and it was a lot of fun. I was part of that project in the so looking forward to the Mid-Coast opening as well.
Thank you.
Let me ask if there are any public comments before we go to the members. Are there any public comments?
No, Chair House, there are no public comments.
Very good. I see Pedro, Mr. Orso, you go ahead.
Good morning, Hassan. How are you?
Good morning, sir. How are you?
Very well. It is exciting to hear what I heard in reference to, it sounds to me that you're looking at going out to some sort of a joint public-private partnership to
Correct.
explore the possibility for the tunnel network?
Yes, 14 miles of it to connect the beautiful landmarks of San Diego and the airport. Yes.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thank you. About time, right?
Yes, sir.
Just want you to know that through the last stimulus, we did get $57 million of transit funding that allowed us to put that money into the Midcoast and take the local funding out. Even though that money was needed to keep the cash flow going. I think with that and other, we might have enough money. And of course, the board and you will see it soon to start, Pedro. I believe that, you know, I think Walt Disney one time said, in a meaning, I don't know the exact quote, but in a meaning, if you want to start doing things, stop talking about them and start doing it, right? We're going to see.
Right.
Yeah, we're going to see what I believe in the private sector and I believe in their innovation. I also believe the public sector should be a partner and should not wait for them to waste their money on this. So we're going to be a partner at San Diego. We're going to put money on the table and do this venture. And I believe the technology there is today to do driverless shared electric system. And it's already been built somewhere else.
I'm excited to see it and excited to see it moving forward, Hassan.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay. Thank you, Hassan, again, for your dedication and for being here, and good luck with the plan.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Chair.
We get back to item 7. We have about another 13 minutes in the spirit of keeping this on time. Ariana, please go ahead and go over the SANDAG goals.
Yes, happy to do that, Chair House. Thank you. So getting back to item 7, the portion that pertains to the SANDAG goals for ITOC, there's 3. The first one has to do with something that we've been, continuously working on, which is to increase the transparency and the accountability to ITOC by clearly and concisely presenting information on the status of various TransNet programs, and then how we plan to complete the approved TransNet programs. And the metric for that would be to increase user satisfaction, something that we've been trying to do by accepting ITOC feedback and incorporating that into the reporting process as well. The next one has to do with your triennial performance audit and working closely with this committee to complete the recommendations stemming from that. And we will continue to provide semi-annual progress reports on implementation progress, in addition to any standalone items that we might bring forward for more direction and more detailed feedback on those. And then the last one has to do with working closely with ITOC to achieve its goals for fiscal year 22, as Chair House highlighted. So the metric for that would be implementation of the ITOC goals.
Very good.
Yeah.
Are there any public comments for SANDAG goals?
No, Chair, there are no public comments.
Thank you, Clerk. And are there any comments by the committee on SANDAG goals? I don't see any hands. I do want to mention that for item number 1, I have been working since I've been on ITOC with staff, and I really appreciate everyone's willingness to improve upon the reporting and the documents that are presented. But I just want to mention that for staff that puts so much work into these reports and provides us all the details, to remember that this is a volunteer committee and your time is precious and so is ours. So less is better sometimes. Put yourself in our shoes. What information would we need to make decisions, understand what's going on, and how much detail do we need to be able to accomplish and do our jobs? So if you thought that way, maybe you could look a little bit beyond the minutia and go up a little bit higher and look at the bigger picture and just give us that. And really appreciate it. Appreciate everyone's effort. I know a lot of work goes into these reports, so we'll continue to work on that. Going back to the committee, I think there was discussion about meeting the goals. Item number 2, goal number 2 will need a subcommittee, and goal number 3 and 4 together will need a subcommittee. I know, let's start with number 2. I know that Pedro, you were interested in serving on the subcommittee for number 2. Are you still interested in doing that?
Yes.
Okay. And I know that there are others that expressed an interest, number 3 and 4. Who would like to serve on that subcommittee, and who else would like to serve on subcommittee number 2? Then we'll approve the item.
Can we put these on the screen? I'm getting confused about committees and whatnot.
Sure. Can we do that, production?
Yeah, I think we can share. Are you looking for me to share the goals? The
Yes.
attachment? Okay. Let me see here if I can do that. So who can share me?
Do you want me to share? I have it on.
I'm not sure if it's letting me. I'm wondering if Kendall, if possible, can you share attachment 1 of item 7? Is that something you can do? Because I'm trying to share and it's.
Well, while you're doing that, let's first maybe take a vote to make sure this is an approved item. Is anyone on the committee willing to make a motion to approve these goals so then we can get into implementation phase? Let's do
that. Chair, it's Mike Kenny. I'd make a motion that we adopt these goals.
Okay.
Let me
Thank
see.
you.
Let me word the motion
Okay.
a little bit more encompassing than that. That we adopt these goals with a plan to implement them and report back on an occasion to review the progress.
Awesome. Thank you, Mike. And Jonathan, you had your hand up.
Yes, I'll second the motion.
Very good. Are there any public comments? Just to make sure before we take a vote. Clerk, are there any public comments?
No, Chair, there are no public comments.
Okay, are there any other committee comments before we take a vote?
I would just make the one comment with regard to item 4, the timeline. I think Hassan just mentioned that the board will be voting on the new regional plan in the December meeting. I think we might want to either footnote the timeline for item 4. The point is that it's critical that we get that work done in time for whenever the board is contemplating an ordinance amendment, right?
So noted, Stuart, this is a kind of a work in progress and to me a living document. So as the committee goes through and subcommittee goes through and identifies the steps and we know more from SANDAG, we should update the timeline at that point. So, and we can do it publicly in one of the meetings. So
Great, thank you.
Okay, very good. Pedro, did you have a comment?
I have a question for the maker of the motion. Is the intent then also in the motion to create the subcommittees to, I guess, flush out each one of these goals?
That's a good point. Mike, would you take a friendly amendment to your motion?
I would. So the motion does not address that. Honestly, I'm not too clear about the extent of the subcommittee work, but I would accept a friendly motion to include that if it can be said out loud in a way I can understand it. So what are we talking about in terms of subcommittees?
Well, two subcommittees to be formed for goal number 2 and number 3 and 4 together, I believe. Is that, Pedro, what you had in mind?
Yes,
Okay. Is that clear, Mike?
Yeah, so how long are the subcommittees going to stand?
Well, it's a fiscal year 22, so it goes through June, end of June.
And how many people are going to be on them?
You have up to 3 committee members can join the subcommittee.
Is that a standing rule for subcommittees for ITOC, or is that unique to this?
Ariana?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, oh, okay, good. Yeah, so that it has to do with the quorum, so, and the Brown Act. So in this case for ITOC, we have 7 voting members. So no more than 3 can be on a subcommittee, because if you have 4, then that constitutes a quorum.
Okay, so if I understand the revision to the motion, or the total motion now, it's to approve the goals, work towards their diligently towards their completion through the establishment of 2 subcommittees, one for goal 2, one for another for goals 3 and 4, to last through the end of the fiscal year. Is that
Thank you,
everybody
Mike.
else? Okay.
Jonathan?
If I could just maybe ask one question for a point of for information, if Ariana could clarify. With regard to any potential changes related to the makeup and selection of committee members, is that an ordinance item, or is that a board policy item, or is it both?
Brown Act.
Yeah, so the selection of committee members, I believe, will impact the board policy as well. There is a rule in board policy 31 that pertains to the selection of committee members. So we would have to take that into account in terms of the time frame for implementation. I believe we've, the board policies are typically taken to the board as one large package for approval. And so to the extent that the ITOC would want to perhaps, discuss that with the board separately as a standalone item, we could work that into the schedule. Does that help answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Thanks for the clarification and thanks for that question. Stuart, Jonathan, would you accept the new motion as a second, the new motion?
Yes, I have one question related to item goal number 4. And so it seems like our focus there, as Stuart mentioned, is really about the amendment to the ordinance. And it would be, I think those amendments will be fairly substantial, very substantial, and perhaps, separating 3 and 4 and really being clear about the scope of the subcommittee work on number 4 is really in making a recommendation to the board on the ordinance amendment. I think given the speed with which that is coming to the board, that clarification about the work of the committee could be helpful.
Very good. Appreciate that. And you were seconding the motion, so are you still good with that?
Yes, I'll second the revised motion.
Are there any other comments from the committee members before we take a vote? I don't see any hands. Clerk, could you please call for a vote to approve the motion as stated by Mr. Kim?
Okay. CEO Private Sector Chair House,
Approved.
Finance Budgeting Vice Chair Stuart Halpern,
Halpern, yes.
Real Estate Right-of-Way Acquisition Jonathan Frankel,
Yes.
Biology Environmental is absent. Licensed Engineer absent. Licensed Civil Traffic Engineer Michael Kinney,
Approve.
and Contractor Construction Pedro Orso Delgado,
yes.
and that motion passes.
Thank you very much, everyone. I really appreciate you supporting these goals. Now, just quickly, as far as volunteers for this subcommittee, we know we have 2 members missing from this meeting. We already have Pedro as part of the goal number 2 subcommittee. Is there anyone else interested in serving in either one of those subcommittees?
I don't know if you want to actually just go around the table. I guess I would say my particular interests would be first and foremost item 4, along with item 3. personally.
Okay, Stuart, you'll be on that subcommittee. I didn't want to put pressure on everybody, but if that's what you think is going to take. Pedro, what is, oh, I'm sorry, we already know about Pedro. Jonathan, what is your desire?
Yes, I'm interested in item 4 as well.
Okay, and Mr. Kenny.
I am interested in the committee for items 2 and 3.
But 3 and 4 are together, 2 is.
I'm sorry.
Serve on both?
Simply 2.
Okay, 2. Okay, sounds like we have at least 2 members for number 2. And we have 1 member for number 3 and 4. Did I get it right?
Actually, Chair House.
I was confused. I thought wasn't Jonathan's comment to suggest separating 3 and 4?
Oh, it is?
Did I get that wrong, Jonathan? I don't mean to speak for you.
No, yeah, that was the nature of the comment. I do think that it could be helpful to separate these two, given the amount of work I think that will be required to dig into the ordinance amendment.
Okay,
I believe that
7 members.
yes, and I believe the vote that already took place
Yeah.
accounted for just 2 subcommittees.
Yeah,
One to
I'm
focus on number
sorry.
2 and 1 and 3 and 4. I suppose one suggestion could be, you know, you start off this way and you could always, you know, if it does end up being too much with 3 and 4 combined, I suppose in October you could take a separate action to establish a separate subcommittee.
Also really think with respect, you know, to what Jonathan mentioned, 3 will lead into 4. So that's why I thought 3 and 4 should be taken up together. I am interested in serving on 3 and 4 as well. So we have at least 2 members each. Feel free to contact us. Let us know if there's any other interest. Mike Kenny has already been assigned, and Pedro has been assigned, Jonathan and Stuart, and myself, and we're missing 2 members, I believe. So if anybody else is interested, just let us know, and let's just move on. We're 3 minutes behind schedule.
Sorry, Chair House, we typically do take a vote on subcommittee membership.
Okay.
If you'd like to do that at this point, or
yes, let's do it. And
okay.
At least for the ones that have already been assigned. So is anyone willing to make a motion to approve the subcommittees with Jonathan and Pedro on subcommittee?
Sorry, I think it's Mike. I'm sorry to interrupt. For the number 2, I have Pedro Orso Delgado and I have Michael Kenny. Yes. And for 3 and 4, we have Stuart Halpern, Jonathan Frankel, and Sunny House. Is that correct?
Yes. Thank you, Ariana, for keeping me straight.
Yes.
And before we move to a motion, is there any activity that's going to take place on these potentially on these 2 committees this month? Because we do have 2 members that aren't present.
Yes.
If we're not going to do anything this month, we may want to wait and vote on the committee membership till next month and give them an opportunity to participate.
We can also add them next month if,
Without-
you know, we can reach
without a
out to
vote?
them in the interim, and we would vote now, I think,
Okay.
just in case that given the time frame, I think there probably will be an opportunity to, you know, and I defer to Chair House, but I think she would prefer that, and Vice Chair Halpern.
Yeah, we have a bird in the hand. Let's just take it.
Okay,
Fair enough.
we can bring it back in October if you want to add more.
Yeah, we will welcome the other subcommittee committee members as well to join. So can I entertain a motion? Can anyone make a motion?
I would move to approve the committee memberships as just discussed. If anybody for absolute clarity can throw it up on the screen in real time here, that would be great too. But the rundown was very helpful. I think I have it straight in my head, so I would propose moving forward.
So the subcommittee for number 3 and 4 is full with 3 members. We still have 1 space for subcommittee number 2, basically. Is there a second on that motion?
I will second that.
Thank you, Mr. Orso. Is there any other comments or discussion? Okay, clerk, please take a vote.
CEO Private Sector Chair Sunny House,
Approved.
Finance Budgeting Vice Chair Stuart Halpern,
Halpern, yes.
Real Estate Right-of-Way Acquisition Jonathan Frankel,
Yes.
Biology Environmental absent, Licensed Engineer absent, Licensed Civil Traffic Engineer Michael Kinney,
Approve.
Contractor Construction Pedro Orso Delgado,
Yes.
and that motion passes.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate the support. Let's move on to item number 8. Ariana.
Yes, that is me. So I do have an update since your last meeting, which was back on July 14th. The Transportation Committee adopted amendment number 3 to the RTIP, which you saw at a recent ITOC meeting. They also received the same updates that this committee did receive recently on the active, the smart growth, the specialized transportation grant programs, and they also received the quarterly regional bike program update, which you saw at your last meeting too. Following your special meeting in July, which was July 7th, you discussed at that meeting the major corridors program projects and the regional plan. The Transportation Committee and the board held public hearings on the 2021 regional plan in July. And we did receive more than 1,000 public comments, so quite a few. And a special meeting is being planned for the board to consider those comments. So the timing for that is, I believe, tentatively anticipated for late October, before the board would be asked to adopt the final plan on December 10th, as Hassan mentioned earlier. Also, as Hassan mentioned, leading up to that, there will be a number of opportunities for SANDAG to engage the community on the regional plan, and we will be hearing more about that in the coming days. So August was dark, so that's all I have in terms of updates since your last meeting.
Thank you very much. Excellent. Okay, are there any public comments on this item?
No, Chair House, there are no public comments.
Thank you, Clerk. Are there any committee comments? Okay, on we're to item number 9, quarterly status update. We have several speakers, so please go ahead. Jenny, you gonna start?
I'm going to start us off. Good morning, members of ITOC. My name is Jenny Russo. I work in our contracts and grants department here at SANDAG. And I wanted to just introduce this item to give you some background on it. So about 2 years ago, sometime middle of 2019, as the agency was doing some more transitional work, we brought our grant focus into the contracts department. So it became the contracts and grants department. So we have a separate division now called the grants division, who focuses on both outgoing grants, where SANDAG's administering TransNet funds, as well as all the agency activities to bring funding in on the competitive side of the house. So I'm managing that team. And one of the first things that we worked on was consolidating these quarterly status reports, because I know they have kind of come up on their own individually. Everyone writes them slightly different. There's different terms and all sorts of stuff. Can be very confusing and hard, as you mentioned earlier, to make a decision. So I worked with the different teams and we consolidated all of that information into one report that you see here. And Tracy is going to present and kind of walk through what's in the report. But we're really interested in your feedback to know, is there information that's too much, too little? What kinds of things do you need from us? I mean, we want to make sure that we provide you useful information that's easy to understand. And I know there's a lot of information in there. So trying to find that balance, that's what we're after today. So I'm happy to present this item, and I will turn it over to Tracy, and she's going to walk through it with you.
Hi, good morning, Chair House and Vice Chair Halpern and board members. Yeah, as Jenny has explained, having consolidated TransNet grant programs all under one umbrella, that really gives us the opportunity to synergize and optimize SANDAG grant distribution programs to ensure that all grant programs are consistent in reporting performance measures, including using consistent data to support and inform decision makers. And I think this really ties very nicely into one of the SANDAG goals, being to increase transparency and accountability to ITOC by clearly, by presenting information that is clear and concise. We try to, kind of sift through our data on reporting and in a timely manner, giving the consideration to the decision makers as to like, okay, what's the fact, what really do I need to know to make this decision? And so we really want to present clear information so that you can make those decisions. So in this effort, we are excited to bring to you a new consolidated quarterly status update of TransNet grant programs report that you have before you today. And the report provides consistency in reporting period, where all grants are reporting on the same period. We're giving you overall TransNet grant statistics, what has been awarded, what has been completed in each grant program. And we're going to have similarity in reporting tables. So the tables will have the same look and reporting statistics so that you know exactly how to measure your decisions. And then we will also highlight actionable items to better summarize information to decision makers and inform the public. So given this, I'll briefly walk through the report with you today and ask you to provide any feedback. So if you can give me 1 minute to see if I can share my screen, I'll pull up the report and we'll go through it. Let's see, Kendall, it looks like host disabled participant screen sharing. Kendall?
I hear you there, Tracy.
Okay.
As a panelist, you should be able to hit the share screen. You're just hitting that green button at the bottom.
Yeah, it says host disabled participant screening when I click it.
Yeah. Interesting. Ariana, is that the issue?
Maybe that was.
While we're waiting here, this is Julie Wiley. I'm the director of contracts and grants. I want to say one of the other things that we worked hard at was trying to bring you these reports not only concurrently so that they're all reporting on the same quarter at the same time in the various programs, but quicker, because one of the things that was happening is it was taking several months for us to put the information together and bring it to the ITOC and the PACs for information. We can't do much better than a 60-day versus a 90, which is kind of where we were at before. And that's because we have to wait for the grantees themselves to turn information into us, and then we have to work with them to get all that information synchronized and into the report. So we have made the effort to make the report fast, come to you quicker, but we're pretty much at our end of our abilities to just try and hit the 60-day versus a 90-day mark on bringing that report. So hopefully I bought us a little time. Maybe Kendall's figured this out.
Yeah, Tracy, you should be able to share screen.
Okay, let's see.
So Tracy, instead of clicking on the little caret next to, it's the actual green button above share screen that allows you to share. So one is about controls, and it looks like you got it.
Okay. So first I'll go over the cover page, and basically this will give you a snapshot of the grant programs and the overall TransNet programs that came out of the TransNet Ordinance and Expenditure Plan. And how these programs award funds. As you see down here, we have a competitive grant program procedures in place, and we will and then we have the board policy. We have a link here to board policy 35, which governs all of our grant programs. And then so as we move down, we have just a little synopsis of what each grant program is about. So this is basically, this cover page is going to be more like a template. And what we will be doing is updating I think the last maybe 2 sentences or so of each program is the number of awarded to date, number of projects completed to date, and what's open to the public throughout the region. So, and then I'll go ahead and we'll look at the action box and the fiscal box. The action box will be, what you're used to seeing, what the action is for ITOC. This will also highlight what the reporting period will be. The fiscal impact, we will definitely, if there's a fiscal impact on your decision, this will be in here. Right now, there's only an approval today, or a recommendation, a request for recommendation for approval for a amendment out of the active transportation grant program. So that's your action here. It has no fiscal impact because it's schedule only. So, and then your schedule impact will be like, if approved, once approved by the Transportation Committee, if it approves, when it will be open to the public, what your schedule will be, how this schedule is impacted by the amendment. We'll also highlight again what projects are during the reporting period, what projects are completed and what projects are on the watch list. And then I'll go into the attachments. And the first attachment is not the discussion memo, it's the glossary, and that is right here. Okay, so as Jenny has said, our grant programs are, though we try very hard to report on the same things, sometimes our terminology between the different grant programs are a little bit different. And so we came up with this glossary of terms. I'll just highlight a few things right here. Somebody wants to come in here and say, okay, well, what is the amendment and who approves the amendments? And here you can go into here and say, okay, like the executive director has the authority to approve an amendment up to 6 months. SGIP and EMPs go to the Regional Planning Committee, active, and also the Senior Mini go to the Transportation Committees. Then we have terms that are more particular to our Senior Mini grant program, cost per trip, cost per unit, if you want to know definitions for those things. And then as we go through here, you might want to know what the project milestones are when we're reporting on the milestones. And so this gives you a little bit of a definition through our policy 35 of what milestones are in place. And then also I'll highlight some of what's the watch list? What does that mean when grantees are on the watch list? And so we have a definition here. And then I will go to the next attachment, number 2, which is the discussion memo. And the discussion memo mainly highlights grant projects, project status changes that were just during that period. So it's a snapshot of just that period and kind of what we want to present concise information. And, as Chair House had said, less is better. So we want to go beyond the minutia of all the things that are happening with the grant programs and just highlight what has changed during this reporting period. So here you have, their completed projects or amendments, if there were any during the reporting period, the smart growth and active transportation, and any amendments that are requested for your action. And then the Senior Mini, and again, the completed projects there as well. Now, attachment 3 is really exciting. Well, for us, it'll be exciting for you guys too. We want to show you our, this goes to what Mr. Frankel was saying, is we want to know what's happening out there in the jurisdictions. Are they really making progress? Is this funding really helping them? So we put together this project showcase of, just we want to highlight what's happened during the reporting period. We might have completed projects up here. We have an active transportation grant program. This is a enclosed bike parking facility that they used their funds for their grant. We're highlighting things that happen, milestones that maybe have been completed. Here you have also a picture of the senior mini grant program. One of our grantees, taking a passenger after they're getting their second shot of COVID-19 vaccination. And then we have an environmental mitigation program on some of their completed projects as well. So, and then the last attachment will normally be the tables. And if there is an amendment, then of course we'll also have a attachment number 5, but mainly we'll have just 4 attachments to each report. So attachment 4 with reporting, we wanted to, basically what jumps out at you when you see this is we wanted to come up with tables that were consistent, providing consistent information to the decision makers. And we wanted to highlight accountability and so forth. And that, like I said, ties very, very, very nicely into the SANDAG goal of increasing transparency and accountability. So here we have the ribbons of each table. And I just wanted to show you that they're very much alike. We have a senior mini grant, maybe it has a little bit two more. We have a schedule watch and we have on-cost efficiency watch. So our programs are basically, if you're on the watch list, it's a schedule watch list because we don't deal in cost. But because of senior mini has a few more reporting responsibilities in their grant program, they have a couple more cost efficiency schedule watch and also operating costs based on the required minimum percentage. And then move you guys back up here so I can get to my stuff down here. Okay, so let me pull up a table here. This is the active transportation. And what we're trying to do here, when I'm saying that we're trying to provide concise data, we're trying to minimize your time in decision-making. So we want to highlight things that are just actionable. I mean, we'll provide the full amount of the tables and everything, but the things that are actionable, we're going to highlight in red. So right here, we have the status and amendment history. And we're highlighting here, the grantees requesting a 7 months schedule extension. So then you can zone right into that. And then we have, I think if I have the senior mini one up, it'll show you, maybe I don't, yes, I do. Okay, it'll show you over here. It'll highlight whether or not they're on a watch list. That'll be something highlighted, so you can see that right away as well.
Nice.
Okay, and with that, I'll go to, well, first of all, let me stop right there. If you have any questions or feedback on the tables, and before I go over to go into the amendment information.
Okay, let me first ask if there are any public comments on what has been presented so far.
No, Chair, there are no public comments.
Okay, are there any comments by the committee members? Okay, first, I just want to commend you for thinking outside the box a little bit. And, we've already started. Look at that. Our one goal is being accomplished. So.
Right. And this is the perfect timing for the report.
That's very good. I like the format. It's concise. It's easy. And I know there's a lot to report on. So thank you, everyone. Jenny, Tracy, Julie, the whole team for doing what you're doing. So. Okay, so let's move on to attachment number 5, which is going to be an action item for us to make a recommendation. So please go ahead.
Right. So attachment number 5 is a amendment request letter from the City of El Cajon. requesting a 7-month schedule extension. And so I have a representative from El Cajon here online if you have any questions. But basically, they're asking for an extension because it's on their active transportation plan, and their plan involved a lot of community engagement and various community workshops and pop-up public outreach events that had to have been rescheduled due to COVID. And so I'll turn it over to Mr. Sanchez if you have any questions. He's here to speak on behalf of that.
Hi, Mr. Sanchez. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you.
Good morning, distinguished members of ITOC. Yeah, I just wanted to emphasize our project is about 75% complete. And we did have our community workshops. They were held virtually, but we're on track to finish our project within our time frame, hopefully by January, February 2022. And then the rest of the time, we just needed to close out the project, but we're about 75% complete. So if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer.
Are there any members of the public that have questions for Mr. Sanchez?
No, Chair, there are no public comments.
Okay, committee members, are there any questions for Mr. Sanchez? I do have a question. I just wanted Mr. Sanchez maybe explain what is left to be done. Are there more public meetings to come? You mentioned the virtual nature. So can you elaborate a little bit on that?
Yeah, could I share my screen real quick?
Well, you can.
Okay. Okay, this is basically, it's our timeline, if you can see the screen. And going down to the actual scope of work, our plan development, our ATP plan development is underway, and we'll be completed in October next month. So, and then we have to do our environmental clearance, and then do a couple more community engagement meetings, which will probably be held virtually. And then we do the actual plan adoption. We go back to our planning commission and to our city council for approval. So we're looking at the January, hopefully February timeframe. So
okay, so you've given yourself a little bit more time by
to finish.
Okay, perfect. Okay, any questions? If there are no questions, I would like to ask for committee members to make a motion to recommend this extension so that it could be voted by the Transportation Committee. Anyone?
I move to make the motion that we recommend the extension.
Thank you, Mr. Halpern. Mr. Orso?
I'll second that.
Very good. Are there any other discussion by the committee members? Okay, clerk, please take a vote.
CEO, Private Sector, Chair Sunny House.
Approve.
Finance Budgeting, Vice Chair Stuart Halpern.
Halpern, yes.
Real Estate Right-of-Way Acquisition, Jonathan Frankel.
Yes.
Biology Environmental, absent. Licensed Engineer, absent. Licensed Civil Traffic Engineer, Michael Kinney.
I certainly approve the motion. I'm sorry I got kicked out of there. I had a question. Is it too late to ask Tracy a question?
Well, let's finish can we finish the vote, or is it going to impact the vote?
No, it won't impact the vote.
We'll come back to Tracy.
I'll stay online.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, Mr. Kenny, did you vote?
To approve. Yeah.
Okay. Contractor Construction, Pedro Orso Delgado.
Yes.
And that motion passes.
Thank you, clerk. Mr. Kenny, go ahead.
Yeah, again, I apologize.
No worries.
Right when it got interesting. So the explanation in the text for the extension was to prepare the scope, the budget and the schedule. Wouldn't they already have some of that already done? Right when I cut out, there was the discussion about public outreach began. Was that the reason why they haven't got any of, say, this real preliminary stuff?
Yeah, sorry. Yes. Yeah, the project had the primary focus of the plan, of course, involved a lot of community engagement, and they had pop-up events that were scheduled, and apparently they had to, well, of course, since COVID, they'd had to redo those, reschedule them for a later time frame. They have commenced, as Mr. Sanchez was speaking, they have commenced on the community engagement process. However, it's just going to, that much more longer is just so they can get enough community input.
Okay, well, thank you very much for the explanation, and it's important work, so take the time you need.
So there's really, just to clarify, there's no scope change. There's just a movement of time in that scope.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Tracy. Thank you, Mrs. Sanchez, for being here and sharing your time with us.
All right.
Approved. So let's move on to the next item, which is the Regional Bikeway Program. And who would like to start with that? Is that Chris?
Hi, good morning. This is Chris. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Oh, great. I apologize. My camera, my desktop camera is not yet set up for these meetings, so you won't have the benefit of watching me present. Okay, here we are. We're excited to be here and work with you on this program moving forward. So this is item number 10 on your agenda. The Regional Bikeway Program, program status, program future, and potential budget amendments. So in this item, we're going to talk about the origins of the Bike EAP, what's been accomplished so far, and the future of the program. Next slide, please, Kendall. So really, the most important aspect that we're going to be talking about today is the future of the program. And so we all know that project costs have increased over what was in the original EAP estimates. And we know that to complete the Bike EAP and deliver the transportation, economic, and social equity benefits of active transportation to the region, we are going to need additional funding. So this item includes short-term and long-term funding strategies. The short-term strategy includes proposed fiscal year 22 budget amendments to accelerate projects and move up the construction timeline for projects and improvements in historically underserved communities. And while the long-term strategy introduces a framework for potential TransNet ordinance amendments to make the bike program more competitive for outside funding. And just as importantly, to get the program, the bike program, better aligned with the goals of the upcoming 2021 regional plan. So we are definitely excited to be here to work with ITOC on coming up with some effective funding strategies to implement our mutual goals of completing the EAP, strengthening our commitment to social equity, and advancing the timeline on these projects and investments in the historically underserved communities. So it has taken us a while to get here, but we're really picking up a lot of momentum in getting our new projects out to construction. Next slide, please, Kendall. So I was asked to just give a brief history of kind of the EAP. I know ITOC is pretty familiar with this, but we're going to be working with a lot of other groups, so we want to make sure everyone's getting the same information. The Early Action Program was approved by our board of directors back in 2013. The initial $200 million TransNet investment was to complete 77 miles of bikeways in 10 years. The EAP action back in 2013 included direction to staff to implement the 30 highest priority urban bikeway projects, as well as our 4 regional bike path projects, the Bayshore Bikeway, Inland Rail Trail, the Coastal Rail Trail, and the San Diego River Trail. And also to make sure that we support outreach and education programs, for example, and then also direction to continue funding the local bike and pedestrian projects through our local active transportation grant program, which Tracy just talked about. So the primary goals that came out of the EAP also included really the main one is encourage more people to ride bikes for everyday trips. You know, our motto is kind of everyday trips for everyday people. So to get there, we want to design and build safe, inviting, and traffic calm streets and protected bikeways that improve connections in and between our neighborhoods and make direct connections to regional transit. And also kind of a major component of that is really, as we work on the design of the projects, to make sure we achieve a complete network and not give up in some of the historically difficult places where we just create gaps, and and that renders big sections of the network not as useful as they could be. So I think that's one of the bigger I think achievements and goals for us, is to make sure we're making complete networks. And then lastly, just improve overall safety for all roadway users. And we often talk about these projects as bike projects, and they are bike projects, but in reality, these projects also bring just as many pedestrian improvements for safety and accessibility, kind of working into that complete streets. And of course, lastly, we want to, in making these connections, we want to capitalize on improved access from these infrastructure investments to strengthen the economic and business development opportunity. So those were really the primary goals coming out of the EAP. Next slide, Kendall. Okay, so the bike EAP today. So we're gonna give just a quick snapshot. This is pretty similar to what was presented to ITOC last summer. We have 63 of 77 miles under 70 miles under development, about 14, almost 14 miles completed, of 11 miles that are currently under construction, and 36 miles that are in final design and have either recently been approved or will be approved shortly, that will go into construction. More on how that plays out in the next few slides. So overall, so far we have $342 million in funds programmed toward the bike EAP to date. That includes $186 million in TransNet and $156 million in external grants and funds. So pretty good leveraging percentage at 45%. And should the grant funds for the 2 proposed budgets in our amendments that you'll see today, that percentage for leveraging will be even better. So leveraging, major thing today, just to let you know. Let's go on to the next slide, please, Kendall. And then a quick recap of some of our recent progress. We've opened two projects this year, the Inland Rail Trail in January and Rose Creek Bikeway this past May. And we also have 3 projects under construction that we will open by early next year. The traffic calm bike boulevards of the Georgia Meade Bikeway will actually be open this fall. The Landis Bikeway should be open spring of 2022, and 4th and 5th Avenue bikeways, which will be open spring or potentially earlier. We're trying to really work with the city to see what we can do to accelerate that. But so far, it's actually on schedule to open spring or earlier. Next slide, please. So out of the 36 miles of projects that we have completed final design, we have these 5 projects that are fully funded. They're about a little over 15 miles. And these will all be advertised for construction by the end of the 2022 fiscal year. Actually, Pershing Bikeway is out to bid now. We expect to open those bids next week. So very excited about that. We're hoping for a lot of bidders and to get some good bids in. Let's see, Bayshore Bikeway and the Barrio, Bayshore Bikeway, Barrio Logan, and the Imperial Avenue Bikeway, we expect to have out to bid in the spring of 2022, and also along with the Inland Rail Trail. So all of these, it's worth noting that all of these projects contribute to improving access and safety and improving our commitment to social equity and building in the traditionally underserved areas. Pershing indirectly, but again, it's the idea of having a complete network. So all of the pieces work together. Next slide, Kendall. Thank you. So let's move into the future of the bike EP and kind of the crux of why we're here today. So the goal is to complete the EP and come up with some strategies to address our programmatic construction cost increases. And I will be giving some more details on our short-term strategy and the long-term strategy. Next slide, please. Before we go into those, just want to give, we always get questions on why are these projects costing so much, which is a fair question. We ask ourselves that all the time. So a couple examples here, and I'll talk about a couple more. So many of our most significant cost increases have come from the fact that a lot of these projects were retrofitting into already built out areas and in established neighborhoods, some of which are over 100 years old. So when we're working out there, we can run into conflicts with infrastructure where there's actually no record of things being there. So it's a bit of a risk. And another one is the regional stormwater requirements, that when the original EAP was developed and those cost estimates were developed, the existing stormwater requirements and requirements for BMPs were not in place. So that has necessitated us to include some major redesign and some additional construction costs, as you can see here on the left. With these BMPs are pretty major infrastructure investments. And then another example is we've run into a fair amount of unsuitable soils. So that entails removal and hauling off of a lot of additional soil and then additional materials to provide proper subgrade for reconstruction. And then also, we found that working in active rail corridors has introduced a lot of unknowns and complexities. The Rails to Trails program, for example, it is great, but it's really intended for abandoned railway corridors. So working in active railway corridors is something that even in our projects now, we try to minimize our interaction with those, but it's not always possible if you're needing to make those connections. Sometimes having to cross a railroad is the only way to get there. Let's see, and then I think I had one other. Oh yeah, one more example we've seen some major costs, is that we originally did not anticipate having to work so much with contaminated soils. So anytime we're next to a freeway or in an industrial area like the Barrio Logan project, for example, there is a lot of aerial deposited lead or other materials, and those, if you've ever worked in construction, it's extremely expensive to treat those, remediate that, and haul those materials away. So we have a good slate of projects that are existing projects that we've got some good lessons learned from. And moving forward, this will really inform better, more realistic project cost estimates and budgeting as we move forward into with our next slate of projects. Next slide, please. Great, thanks. So our short-term strategy is really contained in our proposed fiscal year 22 budget amendments. And the focus is bringing more projects in the underserved communities, bringing those projects forward faster. So all of these projects will achieve that goal. So we have the proposed fiscal year 22 budget amendments. You can see all the details of that in your attachment 4. It includes $2.1 million that could be reallocated from our federal RSTP funds, which currently are programmed in the CMCP program. So the proposed amendments consist of the following. For Howard Bikeway, there's $250,000 to complete work to obtain a federal environmental clearance. So getting NEPA for this project will allow the program access to more funding options to advance construction. University Bikeway, the amendment includes the addition of $1 million of CMCP funding to cover recent cost increases in our construction cost estimate. So that project also has, let's see, over $15 million in outside grant funding. So we did it's really the leveraging there to add that money to be the $1 million to bring all of those outside funding to bear for construction is pretty significant. And then for the Orange Bikeway, we are proposing to add a total of $5.175 million to the budget for construction, again, to bring the project forward faster. This amount is made up of $4.3 million in outside ATP grant funding. So our match here that's required for that is $858 million, which we are getting from the federal RSTP. And let's see, then the actions also include accepting into the program the recent ATP grant funds for the 2 projects. So $4.3 million for the Orange Bikeway, and then a little over $12 million for the Inland Rail Trail Phase 4 project. That's an ATP grant that I worked on all last summer, so I'm really happy that that one came to bear. So that includes amending the fiscal year 22 budget to add $4.3 million, which is made up of the $12 million in the federal ATP grants, and then an additional $2.3 million in local funds, including $169,000 from TransNet to cover near-term right-of-way costs. So in summary, though, really kind of getting to the bottom line, these actions, the total amount of funding coming into the bike program is $18.6 million. $16.4 million from outside state ATP funding, and then $2.1 million from federal formula transferred from the CNCP, and then the $169,000 from TransNet. So you could look at the $169,000 as part of that leveraging power, the bringing a big chunk of that money to bear here. So again, coming back to the leveraging theme, we're pretty happy with what we've been able to achieve with our grants and other funding so far. Next slide, please. Okay, here's our long-term strategy where we're looking to work with our stakeholders and ITOC. So to complete the EAP, we need an estimated $112 million for the projects above the line. If you look at your attachment 1, the above the line is the blue section, which we kind of commonly think of as the EAP and the projects we're trying to complete. So if we remain similarly competitive going into the future, we can expect to leverage up to $50 million in outside grant funding, matched with $62 million of some type of local funding, including TransNet. So how are we proposing to bring these strategies together? It's kind of a two or three-pronged strategy, I think. So to continue funding our projects and really maximizing the power of our local match dollars, we need to develop a long-term strategy that includes a couple things. So one thing to consider that looking at a TransNet extension ordinance amendment that will be coming to you in the fall and early next year. The proposal there is to increase the percentage of funding that's allocated to the bicycle, pedestrian, and neighborhood safety program out of the original TransNet extension ordinance. So depending on how revenues are coming in, we estimate that each additional percentage point would generate about $3 million a year toward the program. Second source of additional funding would come from considering the bike program as part of the major corridors program. So at the same time, the ordinance include that, which is kind of consistent with the intent of the ordinance. So the ordinance includes complete streets provisions and direction to accommodate travel for people walking and biking. And that applies to all new projects, including those in the major corridors program. So rethinking this aspect of how we could do things would also go a long way to breaking down some of the more traditional siloed approaches that we still unfortunately see sometimes, where these significant bike and ped projects are only pursued as separate projects. And sometimes that makes sense, but sometimes it doesn't. So considering moving the bike program to major corridors will simply give us more opportunities as we move forward and to integrate into all of the major corridors, the CMCPs, and the mobility hub projects that will definitely be coming out of the regional plan, and figuring out better ways to integrate multiple modes of travel into these larger corridor projects. So really from a practical point of view, moving into the major corridors program simply gives us more flexibility and more options. I guess the third prong here is repositioning how we are prioritizing the projects that we are looking to implement next. So we anticipate that there will be more outside funding opportunities that arise over the next several years that are available for projects that really more specifically strengthen the social equity aspects of serving these traditionally underserved neighborhoods. So what we want to do is take a fresh look at how we prioritize the remaining EAP projects, and that would allow us to figure out which projects we need to bring forward and match up with kind of new grant criteria that also tend to strengthen what our priorities are as an agency. So the old prioritization process was pretty data-driven. It did a good job of identifying areas where we thought, or the data showed really, we would get the most riders, potentially the most benefit in going through more dense urban areas and making those connections and capitalizing on our other investments in regional transit. But it did not specifically include a social equity benefit. So, that's just what it was. It was by the numbers. And it turns out that a lot of the projects, if we look at our projects that we're doing now, really many of them are in the neighborhoods that we're talking about. So there's a lot of overlap, but there's also obviously room for improvement in equalizing things even more. So we want to make sure, moving forward, we want to make sure that as we develop the regional bike network and the EAP, that they're fully consistent with the goals that are coming out of the 2021 regional plan. So, it's imperative that we take a fresh look at these, prioritizing these projects. And, in the fall, we'll be working with our stakeholders, the social equity working group, and other groups to get input on how best to approach this. And then last slide, Kendall. Okay, so to wrap things up, we have our proposed fiscal year 22 budget amendments that, with your support, we'll be taking to the Transportation Committee on September 17th, and then to the Board of Directors on September 24th. And then in the fall, we'll be engaging, as I mentioned, our stakeholder working groups, the social equity working group, to ensure they're involved in our efforts related to reprioritizing the projects in the bike EAP, and really kind of bringing that together with our long-term funding strategy of maximizing our leveraging opportunities. So in the fall, we'll bring back more specific TransNet options for the ITOC to consider. And it's anticipated that any proposed amendments will move forward to the board and other PACs in January. That concludes the presentation. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kluth. I really appreciate it. Great presentation. Are there any public comments?
No, Chair House, there are no public comments.
Okay, I see Mr. Orso's camera on. Do you have a comment?
I do, but I'm getting nervous of turning the camera on because you're going to be calling me, huh? Okay, so here's Chris. I'm sorry. My mind works in mysterious ways, even to me. So I have a bunch of questions. One of the things in one of the last slides, you talked about long-term strategy and all of these priorities, and you had a bulletized list. And in my mind, you know, in your bulletized list, maybe it needs to be rearranged from the point of, my first thought would be, okay, if I don't have enough money, how many projects of the 20 in the early action I can build and move that line? If I get more money, which projects I'm going to be able to build? But in your case, you have it the other way around. You're saying, I'm going to get additional money, and therefore I'm going to complete all of it. And I'm not sure that's always the best approach. So just a thought on that point. Second concern, I got a little bit lost in, you actually need 4.3 million and 12 million to keep going on the projects that you see some potential risk. Is that correct?
Are you referring to the current budget amendments that are proposed?
Yes.
No, these are projects that are, you know, ready to go out to bid. So we have our best construction estimates.
But if you don't get that money, you don't get those budget amendments, you can't continue with those projects, right? So the action for you eventually is going to be to get these budget amendments approved.
Yes.
Okay, fair enough. So, okay, I buy that. And then the other question that I had is, you mentioned attachment 4 for us to look at in the budget amendments, but I really got lost in that attachment. I mean, it's like fiscal year 22 capital budget amendment, and it talks about CMCP for high-speed transit SR 125. Is that where the money's coming from then?
Yes, the CMCPs right now, some of them are running under budget. Some are a little behind schedule due to COVID. So right now it's working with our folks in finance, it's sort of a cash flow issue, and that when that work does come around, we have the ability to backfill that. But right now we're looking at the strategies on how to add more money to the bike program now. So there was some flexibility there.
Can I add?
Yeah, Rachel, thank you.
Sure. So Rachel Kennedy, I'm the corridor planning manager for the CMCP program. So
hi, Rachel.
Hi, Mario. Or hi, it's nice to see you, Pedro.
Mario's the ugly one.
So just to provide a little bit more background, so back in September 2019, you may remember that the board allocated $40 million to the CMCP program, and that outlined 11 corridors that we would be preparing plans for. And at that time, you know, staff prepared kind of a high-level budget estimate, estimating $3 million for each of the corridor plans. And we hadn't prepared a CMCP prior to those estimates. So right now we have 5 corridor plans that are currently underway. And we took a look at, you know, the current expenditures with the 5 corridor plans that we have underway, and then the 6 corridors that we have planned in the future. And the proposals that were made here to help provide some support to the bicycle program while still being able to accomplish all 11 corridors that were planned. We took a look at, you know, how much money we're spending down, levels of staff expenditures, both Caltrans and Sandag, and then also for the consultant services that we've been procuring. And we identified two corridors where the main money would be shifted from, the airport to airport CMCP. And with that one, here we've proposed moving it from a $3 million overall budget to a $2 million budget. Part of our ability to make that change is that we have 2 corridor studies currently ongoing, the South Bay to Sorrento and the Central Mobility Hub and connections that are looking at opportunities in the border region and also opportunities connecting San Diego International Airport. So we feel that we're going to be able to build on some of the work that's already being done with those 2 plans and accomplish that corridor for a little bit smaller budget. We also are taking a look at reducing the SR 56 corridor. It's a little bit of a smaller corridor with a little bit more limited footprint. So we looked at reducing that budget to $2 million. And we do have 2 other corridors underway that have similar budgets, and we're able to be accomplishing those corridor plans for a little bit less money on some of our areas where we have a smaller physical area that we're analyzing. And then there's $108,000 that's proposed to be moved from the SR 125 budget. So we still retain nearly the full $3 million for that corridor. So yeah, I worked with Chris and with Susan, and I'm definitely protective of the funds for my program that I'm overseeing. And so, I don't anticipate us having any issues accomplishing the work that we need to do in the corridor planning program with these budget edits. So just wanted to give you a little bit more background and let you know we're not proposing to cut any of the CMCPs, but having a little bit more information and building on some of the work we're doing on our current corridors for these future corridors, we feel we can accomplish the work with a little bit smaller budget.
Rachel, thank you for that. If I look at attachment 4, am I reading it wrong then? Am I not reading it right? In my attachment 4, it only shows the CMCP for 125, not all of the projects that you mentioned.
Sure, I'm scrolling through here with you.
Yeah, this is Susan. Let me just jump in here. We had an initial issue with the posting of the agenda, and when this agenda item was initially posted, the attachments were a little bit askew. And you're right, Pedro, there was only one single page attachment for the budget amendment, and that was 16-12501. We have reposted. And so there's actually, I think there's 6 attachments which show the bike amendments as well as other CMCP attachments.
Okay, that makes sense to me. I'm sorry for that. I guess I'm being too
No, it's on us, but when we posted it initially, it wasn't the complete package of attachments.
And then one last question, Chris, and this may not be a fair question to you, and if it isn't, don't answer it. But in my mind, all of the topics that you brought up as far as why are the budgets increasing, in my mind, if there had been some sort of a risk assessment made on all of these projects, all of the water quality issues, all of the potential aerially deposited lead, the potential for hazardous waste materials, and so on and so forth, would have been somehow identified and taken care of in the budgets. I mean, maybe not primarily in the planning, but certainly as they move forward. So, just a statement there. Maybe it's not a question, Chris. Thank you.
Thanks. That's a fair statement / question, and you got it exactly right. At the more broad overview, preliminary engineering, when we looked at things programmatically, we did do risk assessments for each project, but not to the level of detail where you actually know what the construction project itself is going to be. But we do those in great detail as we're going through and getting to the end of the design process. And of course, before we go out to construction, we're pretty thorough in that. So we know them, but we didn't know them all in 2013.
Pedro, can I just add to that? You know, you're exactly right on the money. We didn't do what you would traditionally do for a major transportation project, like a project study report, a PSR, which would flesh out those risks and say, hey, there, you know, a preliminary look says there used to be a gas station here, so we should do some subsurface work. We did not do that. These were lines on a map back in 2013 that the Bicycle Working Group and others have said, these are the highest priorities. And so we had a way to rank them and rate them that the board blessed. And those are the lines. They were thick lines on a map that as we went through planning and then through engineering, we made skinnier. And that's a great lesson learned. You know, I think we've shared with the committee a lot of lessons learned we've had. Like, as an agency, we're used to working in a protected right of way, whether or not it's on a highway or a railroad. When you're working on a city street, your coordination costs go up, your communication, everything goes up to a shocking amount that we struggle sometimes with controlling. And so there's lots and lots of lessons learned when you're working in a neighborhood as opposed to a protected right of way adjacent to a railroad.
Thank you, Jim.
Very good. Are there any other comments? Michael Kenny.
Yeah, go ahead. On a similar, whoops, hang on a minute. On a similar note, much of the problem seems to be with unknowns, and now it looks like you have what, 36.6 miles of projects that are in final design. Are you approaching those unknowns differently now? So we don't wind up in the same kind of predicament?
Yes, we have made adjustments to all of our projects that are nearing construction, and using these lessons learned to better anticipate you know, what kind of risks we need to take into consideration. So you know, we've added a pretty good chunk of money in this last fiscal year budgeting effort to all these projects, knowing that we're going to need that to deal with the challenges that we know we'll encounter, some of them at least, for every project.
It's good to hear.
Yeah.
Odd question on the roundabouts. Are you required to move some of the utilities from beneath the roundabout and keep it underneath the asphalt, particularly the wet utilities?
Oh boy, did the city of San Diego ask you to bring this up?
I've been through a couple of roundabout projects, and all of a sudden you have to move all your utilities 10 feet because longer under the asphalt. And moving utilities is a tremendous cost and imposition to people who rely on them. So I was just wondering if you're in the same boat.
Well, so that's interesting. We've had a lot of back and forth on that issue with the city of San Diego particularly. So where we've landed is, you know, where we can, we coordinate with their public utilities to assess where their highest priority or their most at-risk water lines are. And if they have a project coming up, we will work with them to either what they call it, like piggybacking our projects, or they have, in other instances, they've provided us with designs to move some of those water lines. In others where they have just replaced one, you know, they expect that's going to be there for 50, 60 years. So, you know, what we did there was that, well, and everywhere they've asked us, don't put rebar, for example, in the construction of that traffic circle. Like, okay. So, you know, there's been a lot of back and forth and as much coordination as possible. There are some things that, you know, we're able to design around, and then other things we do our best to coordinate and minimize impacts for now and for the future.
Okay, that's a good answer. I know you look at the roundabouts when they're complete and you think that there's a 6-inch deep slab of concrete that got placed there.
Mm-hmm.
You don't, it's not always obvious that you had to move all the utilities that were underneath them. I know they're more expensive than they look.
Okay.
One more last odd question. We heard earlier about the potential for 14 miles of tunnel in and around San Diego. One of the challenges with bicycling in San Diego is we have some elevation changes that kind of isolate certain parts of the city. There's a tunnel underneath San Diego State, or through the underneath the mesa to access the San Diego State campus, and it comes up. You can get on that on the trolley at Qualcomm, take it one stop, take the elevator up, and cover 300 feet of elevation change with one trolley stop. If we're going to be placing these facilities around San Diego, it would be nice if there was some consideration for bicycles being able to access, say, Pack Highway elevation and the Hillcrest elevation with a station that would have an escalator or an elevator in it. So in the next 20 years it takes, or 40 years for that project to get built, if there was a way to combine the bicycle master planning with those stations, we might be able to make bicycling a lot more accessible by covering some of those elevation changes. Anyway, just a long drawn out thought. Thanks for entertaining me.
Oh yeah, sure. Thank you. Good idea.
Thank you, Mike. Is there any other comments? Mr. Frankel.
Yes, thank you, Chair House. Chris, thanks for your presentation. Two questions for you. One, there's a suggestion that there will be an ordinance amendment to increase the allocation of TransNet funds to the bike program. Do you know what that increase will look like and what staff's proposing?
Not yet. That's what we'll be working with you on. I did mention, just the overall, the potential impact to our funding. For each percentage point, it's roughly $3 million in additional TransNet per year, of course, depending on how much people are spending. But that's kind of the historical average so far. But it's up to our stakeholders and you folks on ITOC to provide the direction on how we really approach that. And so we'll be back with more details and more detailed options later in the fall.
Thank you. Finally, I'm looking at Exhibit 1, which is the proposed project priority exhibit. And there's a number of projects highlighted in blue associated with the EAP. There is a column there for existing project phase, and then also a column that states funding through project phase. So just want to make sure I understand the notation. The funding through project phase, when it says funding through construction, does that mean that the construction of that segment is fully funded? And so we can assume that those projects are not facing budget shortfalls at this time?
So it's important to think of this attachment as a snapshot in time. So this was one of the original attachments in the 2013 Bike EAP. So when it says construction, that was, yes, it did mean that section was fully funded through construction, given the assumption fully funded out of that original 200 million. Of course, given the assumption that the project stayed on budget. So that's how we laid out the kind of the funding expenditures for those projects at that point in time in 2013.
Understood. So given that, I think in our discussion of the TransNet amendment related to increasing the share of dollars for these bike programs, it would really be helpful to know the current funding status, meaning which of these EAP projects currently experience a shortfall based on those construction cost increase, and not just whether they were fully funded at the 2013 levels, because obviously we have I I think by my math, over 50% increase in cost at this point, about 55% increase. And so it'd be really helpful if we could have that information as we move forward.
Yes, we agree, and that's something that Sunny has asked us for a couple times, but we for sure will, next time we come to you, we will have the spreadsheet and all the projects depicted with that exact information that Sunny has asked for, so everyone can see which projects are currently funded, what's the shortfall, what's their timing, what was their original budget. So we'll have all of that, and hopefully a relatively easy to understand spreadsheet, so you can really get a realistic picture of what's going on right now.
Thank you, everyone. We are checking the time. We're about 35 minutes behind. We're going to make some changes to the agenda as we move forward. So hopefully we can wrap this up. Are there any other comments?
Honey, just one and really brief, supporting what Jonathan was saying. I think, you know, it would be very wise to update attachment 1, the one with the blue sheet, as quickly as possible, even before you go to the Transportation Committee, so that you can show them where they are. Because to me, there's a little bit of a false expectation with that table, thinking, oh, I can go all the way down to project number 20, and that's not the case.
Mr. Kluth, are you able to do that within the time frame required?
I think so, with assistance from my colleagues in finance to make sure we get the numbers correct.
Make it more relevant.
We can work on that.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much, Mr. Kluth and Sandak team. Oh, got one more comment. Stuart, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you so much. Just very quickly, first of all, Chris, thank you so much for a very comprehensive presentation. You know, I agree with Pedro. This attachment 1, I think, is really a great snapshot, and the evolution of it that you described in response to some of Sunny's comments, I think would be immensely helpful. The one thing I would just add, and if I'm not sure exactly, you know, what format in which this resides, it looks like it's the type of thing that might be in Excel. When you bring it back, if it actually does reside in Excel, I think it would be great if we could have an actual sortable Excel spreadsheet, because when I look at this, there are lots of different ways I'd actually like to sort the data to try to see it in different slices. And so just wanted to throw that out there, that if you are going to be evolving this, and if you're presenting it to us, it would be great if there's a way that we can get it in a sortable Excel format. Thanks.
Okay, again, thank you, Mr. Kluth and Sandak, for your commitment to this program. It's important. It's a safety issue. So hopefully, and I appreciate all of you being creative to try to deliver what you can within the funding means you have. We're going to move forward. As I said, we're about a little bit over 35 minutes behind. So I appreciate, and I want to be respectful of everyone's time that's committed to being here. So for item number 11, hopefully we can summarize and be a little bit more brief. And also we will move the Mid-Coast Corridor update to the next meeting. It's always good to be flexible so that we can hopefully catch up some of the time we've lost. Mr. Dujian, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair House. And like you said, I'll be brief. Maybe we'll spend a couple minutes with Stephanie, who talks more about the local economy and the sales tax, which is probably more of a highlight than what I have for my particular report. Again, this is a quarterly market update that we bring to you. The last time we brought it to you as of the March quarter, we brought it to you in May. This time it's the end of the fiscal year. Now, this last quarter, we didn't have much going on. I think last quarter we did a lot when we refinanced a number of bonds at TIFIA loans. We did a new bond issue. We're currently working on updating our commercial paper, our standby bond purchase agreements. We're going to release a debt service reserve fund, but those are items that we're currently working on and will bring to you the next quarterly market update. I think the only one positive that you can take out of this report as far as our debt and investments is that Our debt service coverage ratio increased by about 10%, and that's mostly because we had really great sales tax collections for the year, something that we were a little bit surprised of based on the fact that the whole year was a pandemic year. Instead of a -7%, we ended up with a 9% to 16% swing really. And I think at this point, I'll just turn it over to Stephanie to kind of discuss those results. And then if there's any other particular items or questions that the committee members have, I'll make sure to stand on. Thank you.
Thank you. Stephanie, welcome. Go ahead.
Hi, I have a few slides. I don't know if they are ready to be shown. Yeah, and I'm going to go through them as fast as I can. It's just to give you a taste of where we are right now in the recovery. So as you can see on the upper left, the US GDP, and this slide is all about the US. I mean, we had a massive contraction at the beginning of the pandemic, but we have been recovering since then, and we are almost back to pre-COVID level. And this is thanks to many things. This is thanks to the government support. It's thanks to the vaccination campaign that has really helped the economy to reopen, especially in 2021. And what you can see in the two charts that are at the bottom is how government support has really helped household income. And you can see the yellow bars. These are the transfers that people have received during this pandemic, and you can easily see all the stimulus packages and when people receive the stimulus check. You can also see in orange the unemployment insurance that has really supported household income, and this has supported consumption and hence our sales tax. And it's really thanks to that our sales tax revenues were much higher than expected. What you can see also in pink in the bar chart is how compensation, so labor income, is starting to turn around and is contributing more and more to household income in 2021. If you look on the bottom right, you can see kind of the story we've been saying during this pandemic is like when everything was closed, there was a boom of people spending on goods and durable goods. So these are the two blue lines. And this has really helped also our sales tax because, as you know, this is based on, mostly goods. The only type of services that are taxed are restaurants. So of course we were affected by the restriction due to COVID, but thanks to the surge in spending on durable goods, we did quite well. What's new, and then you can see at the end of the chart, now services have started to recover also. They are back to pre-COVID level of spending. So this is very good news for the economy overall. And we are kind of going anti-clockwise. You can see after contracting by 3.4% in 2020, US GDP is expected by most forecasters to increase by 6%, which would be kind of an historical growth. Just be aware of the risk. With the Delta variants and also like the sharp increase in inflation in recent months, people are starting to revise their forecast slightly downwards, but it still remains close to 5 or 6%. We're going to go to the next slide, which is more focused on San Diego. So next slide, please. And this is showing you what has happened to employment. So on the upper left, you can see how employment has really contracted. This is the green line during this recession, much faster and deeper than in previous recession. And you can see we are on a good recovery path, but still in July, the level of employment was still 8% below its pre-COVID level, and it was below than any point during the Great Recession. And as you can see on the upper right, it's really the low income, like the occupation for low income people that still haven't recovered. So we are still 20% below where we were pre-COVID, where the high income, so people making more than the US medium wage, the level is now back to where it was pre-COVID. And this is due to two things. First, you have companies that are still struggling, that are not hiring people, but it's also now we have a labor supply issue with people not ready to go back to the labor market for different reasons, whether it's the unemployment insurance benefits that they have received, especially in California until last weekend, whether it's, you know, because they had issues with childcare, or maybe because they were afraid of going back into the real world after being at home for so long. It's also that many people have reassessed their priorities during the recession, and some have took the time to reskill and look for some other jobs opportunity elsewhere that are better paid. I wanted to put the two charts that are below is to show you inflation, because this is something people are talking a lot about. So you can see the CPI, this is the orange line on the bottom left, the CPI year on year. So July this year versus July last year. So 6% increase, which is quite high, slightly higher than the US level. So this is for San Diego. However, when we remove some of the temporary factor, it's much more reasonable, like slightly above 4% once we remove food and energy. And you can see, I mean, there are two main drivers to this inflation story that most people believe is going to be transitory. It's so the price of energy, and you can see like in recent months, it was 30% higher than the year before. And it's also, you know, everyone talks about these chip shortages that is affecting many industries, including the car industries. And as a result, the price of used car that is part of the CPI has really spiked. So now it's 40% higher than it was a year ago. So anyone looking for buying a used car, if you can wait for a couple of months, maybe you're gonna do some saving. And I just want to go like in 5 seconds on the last chart, which is the dashboard I presented to you guys several times. If you can move to the next slide, please. And so this is my last ITOC meeting, but I'm happy to, you know, to leave you on the green. So the way whenever we are in the green, we are back to pre-COVID level. So when I did this presentation, you know, 6 months ago, we were like in the orange and red, but now we are back in the green in most dimensions. The first one being traffic. You must have noticed the VMTs, the vehicle might travel. I mean, we are back where we were pre-COVID. The mobility is still not as great as it was, because I think people are still grouping trips to avoid exposure to COVID, but spending is back. All of them are back in the green. And the only thing that is still a bit of a concern is the small businesses. I mean, compared with before, we have fewer small businesses that are open and their revenues are lower. So they are still in the orange, and that's, you know, we know they have been hit stronger than large businesses, and it's going to take them some time to recover. And that's it. Thank you. If you have any questions.
Thank you, Stephanie. Are there any public comments? Clark?
No, Chair House, there are no public comments.
Okay, very good. Any committee members have any questions? I don't see any. Well, it's always nice to have some good news about getting back to some sense of normalcy. So appreciate it. And thank you both for accommodating our schedule and summarizing your report. The next item on the agenda is the Mid-Coast presentation. I really appreciate Greg Gastelum for accommodating our little schedule being behind and moving this item to the next meeting. And then the one after that is draft schedule of ITOC meeting for agenda topics. Julie, welcome. I just want to quickly say the reason you see this is because we as ITOC members wanted to kind of know ahead of time what is coming. And this is going to be a rolling schedule. So it's going to change, of course, as another living document, but it will also help us to make sure we put in time for the discussions we need for achieving the goals of ITOC. Julie, anything else you would like to add to that?
No, I think you pretty much summed it up. Thank you. And again, this is just going to be a standing item on your calendar. And so we just wanted to bring it with the attachment if you had any discussion on any items in the future.
Okay, and you see there's some color coordination here to show if there's a topic for discussion, voting, recommendation. So this will be attached to every item or every meeting. And then the next item, Julie, is our future schedule. Before I go, I guess move on. Are there any questions or comments from the public?
In Chairhouse, there are no public comments.
Okay, committee, are there any questions or comments by any of you? Great, we're on a roll. Okay, Julie, next item, number 14, future meeting.
So this is just to announce that our next scheduled meeting will be on October 13th, 9:30 a.m. We are anticipating that it will be an in-person meeting. So, we'll be happy to see everybody in person next month.
Thank you very much. Any questions for Julie? Okay, before we adjourn, I just want to thank everyone again for your patience. Looks like we're caught up. Hopefully we end, maybe a minute short or minute over, but I would like to ask the SANDAG staff to help us start or kick off the committee, subcommittee that we have agreed on for goals. So hopefully we can schedule our first meeting in the month of September and get going. Mr. Orso, do you have any comments?
No, Madam Chair. See that I'm nervous every time I turn the camera on. You think I have a question? No.
Only when I know you're turning on you have a comment.
No, not at all.
Okay, very good. Any other committee members may have a final comment? Now, are there any final public comments before we adjourn?
No, Chairhouse, there are no public comments.
Okay, Ariana, anything else from you?
Nope, that's it. We'll get to work on scheduling your subcommittee meetings. Thank you.
Thank you. So with this, I would like to adjourn the meeting. Thank you, everyone, for joining us.
Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye-bye.